They'll blanket you in Wi-Fi and profit off the radiation. Congregation collecting the people for that Satan. I keeps it blazing, cause I can read between the lines. I ain't blind, we unwind what they're really saying. Genetically modify what you're tasting. Don't need that cottage promise, so now you live up in your mom's basement. Redesign time so your mind is always wasted. Programmed to crave the basics. Keep the beta in stasis. Pay the stake, kid. You're in debt for being born. Messengers are mourn, just the price for being warned. Don't be alarmed, disconnect from their machinations. Stop subscribing to the folly of all nations. Bone breaking ain't the answer, cause they seek the ownership of souls. Spread the seeds and watch them grow. Break the chains of control. Break the chains of control.
Sweet eternal balance of all that is good, true, and beautiful, friends. Tonight, I'm exceptionally honored and excited to have a returning friend of Rogue Ways who has truly lived and created in alignment with a spiritual dimension beyond the ken of materialist science, but helped materialist science to come along and finally get with the program. She has traveled far and wide, immersing in various indigenous and shamanic traditions, and has practiced mediumship, psychic interpretation, remote viewing, paranormal and psychic phenomena, and more, has written and contributed to many publications and studies, and even runs her own podcast now as well. A woman I already feel a deep relationship and kinship and friendship with. Welcome to Rogue Ways again, Gail Hayssen. Gail, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm just doing great. And I'm so happy to be here. You're my second interview.
That's awesome. I think I said it wrong. It's Hayssen, isn't it?
It's Hayssen.
Hayssen. Sorry about that. But
it's a common error.
We're so glad to have you back. I know last time you were on, we got deep into a lot that it sent me on many different journeys. So I'm excited to see what comes forth today. But before we jump into that, I'm so grateful to be able to do what I do and be here with every single person out there who listens and watches. So thank you so much for loving Rogue Ways and Middle Path on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Mountain. Everybody who comes and participates, everybody who listens afterwards on the podcast. We just keep growing and growing, and I'm just so grateful, and I just am so happy. So I always want to share my gratitude with all of you out there, each and every single one of you listening, sharing, liking, subscribing, whatever it is you're doing. You make the dream happen. And so thank you. And especially to the people who trust and seek me out for healing ceremonies, tarot, and, guidance sessions. I'm just very honored to work with anybody on that level. And so I'm very grateful. I wanted to give that all gratitude out there so everybody feels the warm fuzzies tonight as we get started. And you can go to rogueways.org to find out more if that's your first time hearing about any of those things. I also write books, and I'm grateful to all the people who love them so much, especially my most recent, All Endings Are Beginnings. Super great reviews, super great audience there, and thank you guys for sharing that as well. So, Gail, the pointless question of the episode today, last time it was about water, and this time I was going to ask you instead something totally different, which is, what would be your dream project? If you were going to just create something and get to work on something that you would love to do that you haven't done yet, if that even exists, because you seem like you've done almost everything, what might that be?
I never thought of a dream project. In fact, I've never planned anything in my life. Like whatever happens, somehow I get taken down that path, or I didn't know I was going to be doing podcasts. I mean, 6 months ago, you said to me, are you going to be doing interviews with other people on their shows? And then also you'd be doing podcasts also? I'd say, no, I would never be doing that. And now I'm doing it and I'm loving it. So I'm loving meeting the people that I'm meeting, like you, and finding common grounds, and also learning from listening to other shows. So I have really not thought about that. I guess you've
lived the dream, so you didn't have that same sort of, right? Like you've just done everything.
Well, today I was supposed to be on a hot air balloon flight with my family, a family group balloon flighting. I used to be a balloonist for a summer back about 35 years ago, and I haven't been up in a hot air balloon in 35 years. But the winds were so heavy here that it got canceled. So we're going on Thursday instead. But I just wanted to have the experience of going up in a balloon with, all my children. The last time I went in the balloon, I had only one child. Now I've got 3. Wow. So I wanted everyone to have the experience. If I did have a dream project, it would have something to do with probably food and feeding people or processing food and making it and helping people some way, or like having some kind of a little, I don't know. I find like I like my best help is I like when I can help people more directly than when, say, you write a check and give it to the food bank or something.
Yeah.
So if there was something like, it always has to do with food, because I seem to be, all the businesses I've ever done was food. Um, I, I think that would be, if there was some kind of philanthropic dream work, like if, you'd won this big lottery and you could take that money and then just do service to help other people, that would be my dream project.
Yeah. Now I have to connect you with my last guest, because we just had Jim Gale on a food forest abundance. And this is really similar to, I'm actually going to create a food forest via his dream project and what he's doing, helping people get this permaculture going in their house, so that they're in their house, in their yard, in their house, wherever they want it, so that your whole entire space is just a space of food abundance. But I've been seeing your posts on Facebook, and I saw your post about when you were at your first business when you were young was like a fruit stand, and I see all your canning and jarring and processing, and it's really fun to watch. You definitely have that theme through your life.
Well, I definitely have about, I don't know, 80 or 90 pounds of Concord grapes sitting on a table outside waiting for us to press them. I thought it was going to be today, but I think it's going to be tomorrow. And behind that, I have my apple drying coming up next. So I dry golden delicious apples. I live in an apple orchard, and each apple makes a different, better product. Like we're famous here in Sebastopol for an apple called the Gravenstein apple.
Oh, I love
and
those.
It's a very old apple, and it's hard to, a lot of places don't grow it, and it's fading out where we live. A lot of our trees we've lost were very old, like 80 years old, but it's the best apple for pies, sauce. I like the Jonathan apple for juice. I like the golden delicious for drying. I like the red delicious for eating. So they all have different good uses, but you can do anything with an apple, but some now over the years, which one you like best.
Yeah.
So that'll be my last food project for the season. And then there should be nothing else. There's no more trees giving any more fruit or anything else left there. Walnuts. I forgot the walnuts. There'll be walnuts in between.
You'll do apples, walnuts, and then you'll get the rest of the winter.
Then we'll get, yes, then will be time to rest.
Yes.
Plus, when people come on my podcast, like I believe you'll be a guest on my podcast, I send you a jar of mulberry jam and some homemade banana nut bread made with the products that we're talking about.
This was my selfish reason for wanting to come on your podcast.
Yes.
Like, I want to eat that.
Well, I feel like for me, food is, I used to have the produce stand you saw, and then I opened up my own, I built a commercial kitchen, and I was in the catering business, and I was catering weddings and doing this sort of thing for a few years. So I always feel like I have to do something with food, but really food is where I'm transmitting through all this love. Like today I was making meatloaves and chicken marsala, and when I'm doing this, I'm feeling this thing of, I feel like I always have to feed people. And I don't know if it's because I came from a Jewish family. I'm not exactly sure what the reason is, but I always feel like I have to feed them. They come in my house, I've got to feed you something. So I made 17 loaves of banana nut bread 2 days ago, so that I have ready to send out to all my podcast people. But I can't do anything in small. Like I can't just make 6 loaves. I have to make 17, So there's something about my personality and food and abundance. And it's always been, I just happened to post that photo today of Moby Fruit, the fruit stand I started at that age. But so much magical things happened in that store. So whenever I've been in retail, magic happens, and so it's not just food, and it's something about the food, the people, and then the magic that occurs inside the place.
Yeah.
And the same when you eat the food. I had one of my podcast people, I had sent him the banana bread, and he called me up and said, I had an orgasm when I ate the banana bread. I don't mean I actually had an orgasm, don't get me wrong, but it was orgasmic. I said, oh, then you got the message, because I always like to put sensuality into my food.
Yes, that energy is powerful. Like you said, you're transmitting it. You're literally putting it in through the food, and the food is carrying it to that person. And it's nurturing. I mean, who doesn't need more nurturing? Nobody.
Well, and it's different because when people are buying food in a restaurant or people are buying food in fast food, the worst place imaginable, but sometimes you have to eat that food or whatever the situation is. But those foods don't come with that kind of energetic thing that you can put into when you're making it. So I used to do that in the catering business when I made chocolate truffles, and I made thousands of chocolate truffles. We always discussed sexual experiences while we would be beating the chocolate by hand for hours. And then sure enough, you'd give the people the truffle and you'd see this huge smile come on their face.
They're like, why does it feel like I should be hiding while I'm eating this chocolate?
And it would open doors for me. I'd give it to people and I'd get permits I needed, or whatever. I brought it to the Coast Guard once because I needed a Coast Guard paper. I was asked to be a garde manger to do vegetable carving for buffets on a Hawaiian cruise for a friend of mine who was the chef. And back then it was for this Magnum PI group that was a television show. And so I had to get these Coast Guard papers, and everybody said it's very hard to get those. But I brought in the chocolate truffles. The man ate the truffle. He said, whatever you want, I'll sign.
Yeah, anything you want.
Unfortunately, I was not able to handle the ship with I just couldn't handle I would get too nauseous. So fortunately, I took a trip prior to the Hawaii one, knowing that now I should never get on a ship ever, let alone try to cook one.
Oh God, that's awful thing to find out in the time where you've already committed to being there for however long.
Well, exactly. The thing was, it was my friend, so I didn't have to worry. I didn't have to go. He understood when I said, I'm not going to be able to take that job, but I do have my Coast Guard papers.
For no reason, I've got these now. That's funny. Well, yeah, you really can't underestimate that. And we have a good friend of the show, Gordon, who talks about, dancing while you're cooking and singing while you're cooking and just like putting that love into it. And it really changes the quality. You can't deny that energy is coming to you when you're eating it. And that's a beautiful thing.
I love the music and the dancing. That's another addition I also add in my recipe.
Yeah.
So me and your friend.
Key ingredients.
Yes.
I love it. And, I had a therapist who talked about it because I was doing raw food at the time. And she's like, do whatever you want, do it for however long you want. But just like, don't forget that you want to eat with people and you want to share food with people. There's some specific, it's cultural, it's spiritual, it's social, it's emotional. And if you're just always eating your separate food, like there's just something that'll do to your psyche and your heart and your connection to people. And just, sometimes at least put down your raw food and eat with people. And I was like, this is very good advice. And she was absolutely right. And I think it's important.
The same mulberry jam from my mulberries that you'll be getting was just received in Mongolia because a friend of mine was here and I wanted to send it back to some of the Mongolian friends and shamans I know there. So I just got a text just today that Dr. Lagwa, who was a scientist in Mongolia, he just received everything.
Oh, wow.
And he's in his late 80s now, I think. And he's like a very young man. Age is definitely not apparent on him. Wow. And so it was just a great message to get today that he'd gotten it. He felt the love, because I can't communicate. I can't write in Mongolian and I can't, but when I send a piece of this, it's like sending a little piece of me. So I was very happy that it was, and I sent some to England to another man that I had met. And I feel like I'm sending like a little piece of me around into different places in the world.
Yeah, that's a really interesting synchronicity and a really good point that carries with it this message of connection that is beyond words. I love that. Well, let's get into it since you brought up the Mongolian shamanism. And because last time we talked, I think we got so enamored because you've just had such a fascinating life. And so I think we made it up to Woodstock and there's still so much more that happened. And so how did you get to Mongolia and how did you get connected to shamans there?
Well, I have two stories I wanted to tell you. I wanted to tell you about the Mongolians and I also wanted to tell you about Siberians. Because we had mentioned it earlier and they sort of crisscross.
Yeah.
And also the story, I thought I'd start with the Siberian first, if that's okay with you. And the fact that both of these people that I've met from these countries would never have happened had I not met them at a conference that I was involved in helping coordinate the conference. When the woman who had the conference for almost 30 years had passed away, people who had been with her for 30 years working on it took over, and I jumped in and joined to help just organize. Everyone's volunteer. Nobody makes any money on this, but it was originally called the Shamanism Conference on Shamanism and Alternative Modes of Healing. That was the original name. And now I'm not sure what the new name is, but it always has shamanism in there somewhere. I think it's shamanism and indigenous cultures, or I'm not sure what the new name is.
Yeah.
But at that conference, people would come from all over the world, and we would, in just the 3 days that this conference would be held in this little place in Santa Sabina Center in San Rafael in California here, shamans would come from Laos, Hmong shamans, Mongolian shamans, shamans from Vietnam. So in 1 3-day time, you would see a shamanic ritual or ceremony or singing or a slideshow from maybe 6 different cultures in that in that one short period of time. Wow. So I ended up inviting a lot of these people to my home after they would be at the conference. And that's how the beginnings of all these relationships of these people I'm going to tell you evolved from. This Siberian shaman had come, and her name was Vladimira, and she was Russian, from Russia. Very tall. I couldn't whip up her picture here, but very tall, beautiful. Maybe I do have one here. Very tall, beautiful shaman who would come, and she spoke at our conference, and I asked her if she'd like to come to my home, and she came on numerous different occasions, and she would do all these unusual, wonderful rituals that I would invite people that were friends or the people from the conference. They would be small, intimate, 5 to 20 people. And I found her rituals in just, they would seem so simple, but they were very powerful at the same time. And so you're entrusting that the shaman that's doing these rituals, you're really entrusting that they'll take care of you and everything will come out correct. With her, it did. So there were 3 rituals I wanted to speak about. One ritual was, it had to do with the ancestors in your life, that we carry ancestors' DNA and energetic things, and we carry them in our spine, is what she was saying. And in that place, we may be operating in our life today with things that we don't know why we act or do this way, but we're really carrying on, whether it's the karma or whatever the word you use of someone that's in your ancestral life from before. So she said, what we do to get the person's to remember and to relieve yourself from this, especially there could be negative energy patterns you're taking on, or people who've had great losses, a family might have been wiped out, whatever the different tragedies or things that have happened along the way. And so we would each become a couple, 2 different people would get together. So when you did it to one person and then the person did it to you. And I had this building in the back that used to be part of an apple processing place that I turned into what's called was a shaman center, or a place to do these rituals. But, the most I could hold in there would be maybe 50 people, so it wasn't for big things. And now my daughter lives there, so I can't use it anymore for this anyway, but, and we're very happy to have my Nancy there.
That's a good energy house to have. I would take that.
Yes. Oh, and she's left, all my tankas are still there. All the spiritual items I've had, she's wanted them all on the walls. My rug of Chinggis Khan that was brought to me by the Mongolians on the walls. She has it all in there, and she keeps the place immaculate. That's amazing. So I'm sure if the Mongolians came and we needed to do a ceremony, she would let us. So when Vladimir would come, these rituals, as I'm telling you, were over a couple year period. So she came at different times when we did these. So the person lay down on the floor on pillows and took their shirt off, and then the assistant or the person doing the ritual on them. And when I first heard the ritual, and I have to say this about all these rituals, at first when you hear about them, they're like, what? You want me to do what? They always seem to have to do something with burning or hot. I don't know. They have a ritual that doesn't have to do with burning and hotness, but anyhow. So you took, and it had to be a certain kind of wax. I think it was, so people do not just go out there and try this.
No.
I think it was paraffin. I think it had to be paraffin wax. There was a specific type of wax it had to be, and I'd have to really look it up because this is quite a few years ago. But you melted this wax and then you dripped it slowly down the spine of the person. So this hot wax would get poured starting from the back of your neck
Wow.
all the way down to the base right before your tush.
Oof.
And at first I thought, oh my God, this is going to be some burning, uncomfortable experience, but it really wasn't. It was a very amazing experience. And images would start to come up into your mind as the wax would be being dripped down the spine and different as it was going down. Images popped up of places. I don't know for me if it was seeing my grandmother in Poland or my grandfather in Russia, or I'm not sure because my grandparents came from Poland, Russia, and Czechoslovakia. So I don't remember now because it's been a while, but whatever was happening during that was very photographic kind of pictures would pop up, and you would sort of release into these things, and you would just release and let these things go. And some people might have had some emotional releasing at the same time. I don't remember because there was about 10 of us in the room. So 5 were doing it and 5 were, and then you switched the persons. I thought this was a very amazing ritual and nothing I'd ever heard of before of doing something like this to clear up your DNA and your ancestral DNA by connecting with it and releasing it.
How cool.
Then she brought another ritual, which I think people have done in, back in the 60s and other, I don't think this is anything I'd never heard of before, but I thought it was a little dangerous, but we did it anyway. Because I live in an apple orchard. And so there's a lot of branches coming out of the trees. And she had us all blindfolded. And we're walking in the orchard, we're walking up a hillside. And so you have all this uneven ground. It's not like you're on cement or anything. But she would just either sing or say certain things, and we would just have to follow her voice through the orchard, about 10 different people. And we were all blindfolded, and nobody's eyes got poked out in a tree, and nothing terrible happened to anybody. But it was learning to see really with your third eye and not with your eyes, to be able to navigate around in a field that had really some things. She did have people there to protect you so that if you looked like you were going to walk in or hurt yourself somewhere, there would be someone watching so that they could then steer you away from, falling in a hole or something like this. But it wasn't like that. They just watched on the side, and people did really, really well. Just, and after a while you start to feel, at first you're a little nervous, but then you start to feel comfortable. And of course, it's what a person who has no sight has to also experience in their world.
Yeah.
So this was a very interesting ritual, and it gave you, another sense of seeing without your eyes. So I think that's like a good ritual to learn.
That's like
about
a Jedi ritual, like the Jedi training, like you close your eyes and fight, except it's not as violent, but
we weren't in a room. We were in in the outside in nature, in an orchard.
Wow.
And then the last one she did, this one, when she said to me, Gail, I want to have a ritual at your house. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be legally responsible for these people if they get hurt, right? But then I'm remembering to just trust in the spirit and the shaman and the way of the experience. And it all turns out to be lovely. But I don't want you to think I don't have the paranoid thoughts at first. When she says, invite over some people, let them know we're going to do a running over hot coals ceremony. And even though I've heard about it and seen these, I really had to imagine having one in my own yard,
Yeah.
But it's only through the experience of inviting these most wonderful people that come and share these things. So she had my son, because we heat our house with wood as well as propane, but so we have a supply of wood all ready to go. And she had him start the fire, hours before we were actually going to run on it. And it was it was the shape of a rectangle. And I think it was about 12 feet long and maybe about 4 feet wide, something like that. And my son loves to deal with fire. So since he was a kid, he loved, and fireworks and fire things. So to be asked him to do the job of making hot coals, he was very happy. And he made a beautiful bed of coals. And she had it out there till she felt it was the right, bright coal, glowing what she wanted. And meanwhile, we would be on the other side of the building, inside the building, on the other side of the wall. And we were doing ceremony and chanting and things like this. And I think kind of bonding together as a group. And then we went out there in the dark, and I said to my son, he kept saying the whole time, yeah, I'm going to do this. Oh, sure, I'll go across. No problem, no problem. And then as the beds were glowing there in the darkness and the red coals were shining, I said, are you going to do it? He said, nah, I changed my mind. And I was looking at it and feeling a little scared myself at the thought of, because you're barefoot, you're not even wearing your socks or anything. You're barefoot and you're going to run across these hot coals. And I'm thinking a little match head hurts when it just burns you. How could you possibly walk around hot holes and, go across them and not hurt?
Yeah.
So while I'm thinking about it, the other people are running through the coals. And the shaman at first, she takes one person, she holds their hand and runs them across the coals. And the ecstatic look on their face when they get to the end of the coals is like a high, So I still wasn't ready. And then she just grabbed my hand. And the next thing I knew, my shoes, I was ready as far as being barefoot. We were all barefoot. And I went running across the hot coals with her. And I was so exhilarated that there was no burning sensation, no smell of flesh. No one got burned. And by the way, I've seen in videos, there are people who do get burned and they do get hurt. And I'm not telling your listeners to go make a bed of coals outside and go run
this at home. Yeah, this at home. Yeah.
Do not try this at home. This is one of those TV ads, right? Have your shaman there and then you can make your bed of coals. Because I do think the shaman does something, and I don't feel that I'm capable of doing this sort of thing, but does something to prepare those coals in a way that they do not burn you. And I don't believe that if you did it yourself, you could do that necessarily without some form of some kind of spiritual knowledge on knowing how to deal with the burning coals during what is like a cleansing. Yeah. So after we did it once, I ended up doing it with her like 5 or 6 times. I went running across, and then you're screaming after her, it's like this elated feeling. Well, I didn't know what the effect of it would be until the next day. And when I woke up the next day, I had arranged to take them on horseback riding at the ocean, because we live like 20 minutes from the coast here in California. And I thought, well, this would be a great little vacation, because they're doing all this work all around. Let's take a little break, take a little horseback ride on the beach. So we get there and we get on the horses, and it's one of these things where they have to take you across a parking lot, and then you're on the sand of the beach, and then you'll go galloping across on the beach with their guide. We're on the horse, and this is only the morning after the coal running. And I'm a person who is not a horse person. I grew up in Flushing, New York. I did not grow up on horses. I have not, I have a tremendous respect for a horse. I don't think they're going to do what I ask them to do. And I'm a little bit afraid of them. I've been on them when they take off and you have no control. And it can be very scary. So, and plus the pain you feel in your body when you get off them because you're not used to that kind of thing. So we're going there, we just get into the beach, and all of a sudden we're in a little trail just like this. And my horse just collapses like it's had a heart attack or something.
Oh, no.
The whole horse just goes straight to the ground like this. His legs get bent. And because I feel of the presence of mind I had from having this shamanic running across coals thing, the second it happened, I was able to roll with it instead of rolling in fear. And the people behind me All they saw was that my leg would get crushed and I'd be hauled away in an ambulance in that split second, because when they saw him collapse, they're not imagining any, my feet are in the stirrups, right? Well, somehow when he collapsed, I just rolled and leaped out of my feet out of the stirrup and was standing up while he was down.
Wow.
And I didn't even know, the only thing I could credit that I could do this to was the cold thing, because I would normally have just been absolutely terrified and I would have panicked and not done the right thing. Well, you pay a lot of money to take these little horse rides. So I had to speak to the company after I came back, like my horse collapsed. And at first I thought, I'm so heavy. Was it my weight? Did I, hurt this horse in some way? But after he did that, he got right back up, laughter. And I got on him and we continued on the ride.
Oh.
Then I said to them, so what is it that actually went on during this? Yeah. They said, first of all, you must be a very spiritual person, they said, because a horse never does that when there's somebody on their back. And he said, what it is at this time of year, the fur underneath, or whatever the horse hair is underneath, starts shedding, and they want to itch, and they want to itch their belly. So the horse felt comfortable enough to drop down into the sand, scratch himself in the sand to get the itching done, and then just, go on our merry way afterwards. She said, this is, horses do this, but usually there's not a person on them when they do this. So I felt that that ritual, it was the only way I could say a way of that really proved to me that it had affected me in a powerful way, because I would have never been able to react like that. So I wanted to share those 3 rituals with you, and that being from a Siberian shaman. The Mongolians is a whole very deep experience for me, because we've become family with Mongolian families, and they know that they're my family and I know I'm their family. In fact, I should have showed you the portrait, but I think on Facebook you can see it. On one of our visits, I went to Mongolia twice, but I'd really rather start off saying how I met the Mongolians was at that shaman conference. And I was asked the woman whose conference it was, Ruth Inga Hines, asked me to assist them because their translator hadn't shown up, and she felt I'd be able to translate somehow Mongolian for some reason, which I didn't think was really possible. But it is one of my specialties, is that somehow I'm able to communicate in other cultures without ever having the use of the common language amongst each other, and yet always having a feeling like I'm inside their head and they're inside my head. And I've only recently been thinking about it, because I always just sort of flowed with it, and I never questioned why did it happen or whatever. I just figured that's how we do it. But now it's starting to make me think about when we talk about telepathy. And, I'm in a chapter in Dr. Dean Radin's book, Supernormal. It's a chapter on telepathy, and it's a telepathic experiment that I did with him. And I've been known for this telepathy thing. So it hadn't dawned on me that all this telepathy that I've been doing with people in other cultures makes me think that telepathy doesn't have to do with words. Because I don't know those words and they don't know my words, but yet we're able to communicate. So it's only in this last, 6 months or something that I've been thinking about, well, what's really going on there? Something is going on, but no words are exchanging. So it's not like you're going in and speaking in English and saying, so what do you think about this? And they're saying, oh, okay, this is what I think. Oh, all right. Okay, I'm reading their mind. How can you read the mind of someone whose words aren't your words? So that's a question I'm asking you or your listeners. I don't have an answer for that. I'm just thinking about it.
It makes me think of this, because I remember talking to someone who had come here from Mexico. He came across the border through Canada and snuck through, and he had lived here for 10 years by then or whatever. And I was asking him, are your thoughts in Spanish or are they in English? Like, now that you've been here this long, do you think in Spanish? And he was like, oh, and he's like, weird. He's like, no, I still think in Spanish, but then I translate it into an English thought and then I speak it in English. So he has like two layers of thoughts, and I remember thinking, well, what's below the Spanish? You know, like something is animating all of it. Maybe that's what you're tapped into, is this like deepest, whatever that is, the symbolic language, the green language, maybe like the language beyond words. And
A
then you
language
translate
beyond
it
words,
into your language, right?
right? I've I've had that when I've stayed in other cultures, especially in Mexico, when I stayed with the Huichol Indians way up at 10,000 feet elevation, and Spanish is a second language for them, and Spanish is a second language for me. But after I was immersed there long enough, and my Spanish is still terrible, but we seem to communicate well. We make up words and things. But when I'm immersed, I start to dream in that language. And that's when in the dream, I'm hearing the things in Spanish. But that's after, after I've been there for 2, 3 weeks, and there's been no English. There's nobody for me to talk English to unless I want to just talk to myself. And all it is Spanish and Huichol. And it starts to creep into the dreams. And in the dreams, I start dreaming with Spanish, and I'm hearing Spanish or I'm speaking Spanish. Um, I think young children, if they can be immersed in another culture or language, or they have somebody working in their home who speaks another language, I think I read that up to you're 2 years old, if your brain has heard those different languages, it's much easier for you later as an adult or teenager or child to pick up other languages, because your brain has already sort of understood that there's two different languages going on as you're growing up.
Oh,
So
cool.
one thing I think would be a wonderful thing for any listeners, anybody having children or thinking about it, know that you should expose them to, at least one other language than English as soon as possible from when they were born.
Yeah, like maybe if you're gonna do childcare, do it in the different language childcare place.
Yeah, there's a lot of things it's very stimulating for the mind of the young baby. So anyway, back to the Mongolians, because I know you and I are going to just keep going off on tangents, but I guess it's okay. So I was asked to assist these Mongolian people who had arrived, and it was a shaman named Zork Batar, and he came with his wife Bayarma and a bunch of other Mongolians and a Professor Bat Bayar. And Professor Bat Bayar and I have been together ever since that first time when I was trying to tell them where to put their clothes, and that they were our guests, and where there was food to help themselves, and that they had to be ready for their presentation at 6 o'clock. And it was a very charades and whatever, using your hands and explaining how to get things and to do things. And then they came here to my house, and I can't remember what we did together, but we did some wonderfully fun things together. And then they went back to Mongolia and said, we're going to invite you to come to Mongolia sometime. So it was, sometimes I get my years a little mixed up, but I think it was 2005 when I met them, and I was invited there in 2006. So in 2006, I went there for what was called the 800th year celebration of the Mongolian Empire. And the whole country was in celebration.
Wow.
And they had this area, the capital of Mongolia is Ulaanbaatar. And once you leave Ulaanbaatar, you're really going into no man's land there, no man's land. That's your largest city in the whole country. And I think it's a population of under 1 million. There are more animals in Mongolia than there are people.
Yes, I want
And
to go there.
what's that?
I said, yeah, that makes me want to go there.
Oh, I have to say, I've been to the Gobi Desert. In fact, I brought a rock here to show you on this in the picture. This is a rock from the Gobi Desert.
How cool.
And you see how it's kind of pointy on the top?
Mm-hmm.
That's where I hit the tire that blew up, and we got stuck in the Gobi for
Oh,
the
God.
entire day into the evening, because no cars come by when you're in the middle of the Gobi.
Oh, my God.
Anyhow, so there's so many stories about Mongolia, it's hard for me to know where to begin. So anyhow, when they came to my home and they invited me to go there, the events that we went to were, I guess they were produced by a couple of other countries that also contributed money to fund for these events. and they were reenactments of like the battles of Genghis Khan. The women wore the clothing that was worn during the times of Genghis Khan. The event was, you know, archery and all the things that would be done in those times. And everyone was dressed in Mongolian clothing. It was very beautiful. And in fact, I won a first prize in a photography photography contest that I had entered here on one of my pictures of the Battle of Genghis Khan. When you see like 60 men on horses charging at you with bows and arrows, you know, and it was actually the Mongolian cavalry, and they all dressed in the clothing of what would be the times of Genghis Khan. So it's an amazing country to visit. And my visit there, that first visit was, I had an incredible time, and I met with a lot of amazing people. And one of the places we went to was a place called Lake Kovskel. And it's one of the 11 pure, pristine lakes left in the world. I had a picture here I was going to show you of the Lake Kovskel. I had a map here, but anyway. And at Lake Kovskel, we stayed in gers, which we call yurts, but in Mongolia, they're called gers. And we were there to spend a few days there. It took days and days crossing rivers in these Russian vans to be able to get to this place. But it's a very sacred area, and it's across from the oldest shamans in the world, who are the reindeer shamans. Did you ever see that there was a movie called Horse Boy?
No.
It was about a documentary about an autistic boy whose parents took him to be with the reindeer shamans there. And it did they put him on a horse there, and the shaman and the autistic child connected. And the child advanced a little bit further than he'd ever gone. He didn't become like cured or something, but he got to a place where his parents could relate with him and play with him that they'd not been able to do before. But if you watch the documentary, it's very a heart-filled documentary. So this is a picture of what those shamans look like. And I don't know if you can see it. Is that held up right? Can you see it?
Yeah.
I don't know. In the background here, you'll see that's an actual reindeer right there, and there's a wood saddle on the reindeer.
Wow.
And these shamans live in teepees, and I'm told they speak a different language. We were supposed to go across and meet them, and I want to go back to Mongolia just to do this again someday. But there was a huge storm, and you can't cross that lake. It looks like an ocean. It's so huge. And it was, you know, it was waves were coming up, and it was too dangerous in these little small boats to go across to the other side. So the only thing that I could see was like little dots on the hillside of their fires burning, because they live in, I mean, we're talking very cold, nothing like very, very cold, 30 below zero. They speak a different language than Mongolian, and they have their reindeers for their milk, and that's their herds of reindeers, and they live in these teepees. And it makes me wonder, were these the teepee ideas that got spread across the world and became the Native American teepees in North America? Because these are the oldest shamans. So it makes you all wonder, I don't know. But it was a very powerful place. I had very powerful dreams there at this Lake Kovskel. And it was an area north from there, closer. There's an area somewhere up from there where shamans all go to meet. I can't remember the name right now. I can't pull it out of the top of my head. But it's a place where they all go once a year, and shamans from everywhere come to meet, because it's considered the most sacred shamanic place to do ceremony. It's somewhere close to Siberia, somewhere from Lake Kovskel, in between there and Siberia, somewhere around there. And the name may come to me later. And they all gather. I've been invited, and I've never made it there. And that's another one on my, when am I going to get to that? I got to do two things there, right? I have to go see the reindeer ones and attend this. And in fact, it was Vladimira, the Siberian shaman, who had invited me to that when they were going 1 year to that particular ceremony. So it's not like just Mongolian shamans. Shamans come from all over.
Wow.
Shamanism is, more like a religion in Mongolia. It's Buddhism and shamanism. And shamans couldn't practice for many years under the different countries that were ruling them. And when they became free, shamans got to come out and really express themselves again. So when I was traveling in Mongolia in 2006, excuse me.
You're fine. Wow, I didn't really understand that they had been suppressed.
Oh, yes, very much. When I went there back in 2006, when I would be with the shaman Zores Batar, other Mongolian people would be coming, wanting to see him and, have a ritual or do a ceremony or ask him to bless them, or if they had someone sick. So the shaman is used as a person that's like a doctor and like a therapist and like a feng shui house decorator, And in different cultures, they have different degrees of what the training is involved to become a shaman. As a Huichol shaman, their dedication is something like 20 years before they can be considered a respected shaman, and that, they can go and do rituals for the dying, or, being someone who sings for a healing or different things like this. In the Mongolian tradition, there are different traditions, and each one follows a different degree of what they're doing. Like something on the clothing is different, or the way their drum is shaped. Like I know that when I went to Mongolia the second time, and I brought my husband and two of my children, we met what's considered a black shaman. In Mongolia, there are white shamans and black shamans. And a black shaman doesn't mean that he's a negative shaman, but he's a shaman that deals with negative energy and can help to rid of things like this. And this particular group, I think it begins with a D, but it's very hard to pronounce, the Darkhan, or anyway, those particular group, that shaman had triangle drum, not a circle drum. He has a special triangular drum. So, with the differences of languages, there are books you can read about. There's one book here, I can show you the cover. This is printed in Mongolia. Ah. Now, this book is respected by the Mongolian people. It's a translated version from Mongolian into English of what shamanism means to them. So this is where you could find information about what's been said about their preparations. I was there, and we were having in our conference there, I had presented a paper about the Huichol Indians and the peyote ceremony, because I have attended and participated in the peyote ceremony with the Huichols in the mountains of Mexico. And I thought this would be a good thing to share in Mongolia, because I could show slides and bring clothing and bring beaded work that they've done and things. And it would be a much better way of sharing, because when you have objects and things that they can touch and hold, when you have the language barrier, it really helps. You have a translator there translating what you're saying, but somehow it gets a little lost in the translation. Yeah. So, in fact, they wrote an entire article about it in the only English newspaper in Mongolia. It's behind me, hanging on the wall there. I don't know that you can see it, but it's about my talk that I gave there, and they put in the pictures I had of the Huichols, and they loved the experience of, and I played some music of the Huichol, and I had in my videos one of my Huichol friends speaking in Huichol so they could hear the language. And often you hear words in these two different languages that sound like a similar word. And I found that very fascinating. Like some Mongolian words sounded like some Huichol words. Wow. And that was like, wow, but that's a deep involvement in figuring that part out. Yeah. So I was going to show you one other photo of another shaman, and I don't know if you can see, this is a Mongolian shaman. They're powerful shamans. And he's a few feet off the ground. I think if you can see in the picture, he's
Yeah.
in the air doing his thing. And, this is like in somebody's apartment or something.
Oh.
You'll see that the headdress on the top, you'll notice that it has feathers going upwards and then something in the front. The front is called a curtain, and the curtain is to take away your eyes because now you're being transformed and your sight is up here now, not here with these eyes. So your hat that is made to wear up here, that's where your new eyes and nose and ears are, is part of the headdress on the top.
That makes so much sense.
I have one that was made for me, and it has like a light curtain in the front, so I can still see, through it. A really powerful shaman who's practiced for many years. The veil, the curtain is very thick, and there's no way he's looking out through his eyes. Yeah. And one of the rituals I heard, and I know that there's papers written on about it, is I don't know if it's a test or a ritual or exactly what it is, but the shaman in Mongolia has to climb a tree. And I've seen the film footage of it, and it's incredible. They're climbing a tree with not using their eyes, going up these trees where there's no net to catch them if you fall. And they're doing unbelievable climbing to incredible heights, women and men. And they're achieving this tree climbing experience. This is such a hard subject for me to talk about because I realize I'm going down so many different avenues. I don't know if I'm answering your questions right or.
No, it's fascinating. I love it. You always connect each thing as you go, so it's really beautiful to hear.
On that particular one, we had the experience where this shaman was there that was a very powerful shaman named Zagda, a woman. And when you have a pain or something you're trying to get rid of, she uses a whip to whip it out of you. And it sounds kind of scary if you say to people, yes, well, there was a whipping ritual that happened. But first of all, it works. Second of all, it really depends what the issue was. For me, she was a very gentle whipping, and you have your clothes on. And I don't remember what my ailment or problem was or whatever, but she just gently just whipped you like this. But then this friend of ours, Kevin, who's someone who lives in Japan. So there were different people that had come for this conference from there were Koreans, there were people from different parts of the world, and just, a few Americans. He had a very bad back situation that he'd been suffering for years with. And she whipped him. He had a jacket on or a shirt or whatever. I was sitting next to him, but she whipped him much harder than I had ever seen anybody else during this little ceremony get whipped. And it was intense to watch her do this. And I've always been in contact with him for years since we met at that place in Mongolia. It was a national park, a really beautiful place. They had this conference. He said to that date, he has never suffered from his back ever since.
Wow.
He's had no back pains. And it was something that he'd lived with for a long, long time. And then I saw him again a few years later. I said, still no back pains. So I'm just giving you the results. Yeah. I'm just telling you the method.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, I'm not telling you to go home and, whip your friend or anything,
I was just saying, it's exactly like the Coles, don't just go do this.
Right, just don't go do this, right.
It's not the same.
Yeah, shamanism has a lot of, in fact, I'm wearing a cashmere Mongolian sweater right now so I could be warm because the weather is changing here.
Yeah, it's getting cold and windy, but.
Getting colder.
I like it.
So, my kids went to bed and I had said to them, you missed your mom getting whipped last night. You should have stayed up to see this, And I had the wonderful experience on the first one where, I don't know if you've heard about the ones where they have the, in Mongolia, it's eagles, and they're trained to find prey on animals for them. And some of them are, if they get injured or they've lost an eye, in this case, it was an eagle that had lost an eye, they become more of a pet of the person's. They take care of them, they still help. So I got to have the experience, and that was one of those, a dream on your bucket list thing, because I've always felt very connected to eagles. And I've helped the experience in a dream of being inside of an eagle and flying and looking out their eyes.
Wow.
So I felt very, very close to this bird. And I always wanted to hold one, but figured I'd never get this experience. But there we were driving down some road in the middle of the outback of Mongolia, and there was some kid on the side of the road, and he had his eagle out,
Wow.
and has a little hat on. So I got to sit there and have this, just to hold this eagle and look at him and just feel his weight. And it was just a wonderful experience just to connect to the bird, which Mongolia allowed you to have there. And I did all kinds of different experiences there, from traveling and driving and all this. Well, after this second visit, the shaman Zagda was going to be coming with our Professor Batbayar on a trip to the United States. I don't know if it was her first trip or her second trip ever being here, but I know she does travel the world and speak in conferences all over. She's a big shaman in the Mongolian government. She goes out to places and speaks. I was her 62nd or 63rd initiation, because when she came to the United States, she stayed at my house. And then she left. She was going to go off to Chicago, because there's a lot of groups of Mongolian people living in Chicago. Excuse me. When a shaman comes from Mongolia to the Bay Area here, we had 30 shamans come up to, not 30 shamans, 30 Mongolians come up to see her here and experience the treatment that they needed to have with her, and whatever they needed to do for her to heal them of their situation. I happened to be the only one here at the house, so it was me and the 30 Mongolians, but it gave me an opportunity to have a little more communication, because they're English-speaking Mongolians, because they, have left Mongolia and live in the Bay Area now. But they can't have a shaman doesn't just drop in out of nowhere. And a lot of these people live in apartments where you're going to have a fire and, do all this kind of ritual thing. So I offered my place up, and they all came and they all danced and sang. And I have some beautiful video footage of this, because it was filmed by a San Francisco UCSF college student. Okay. So he filmed the whole thing, and he was very curious how two people with no interpreter could perform this entire intense ceremony and, and not have anybody explain what was going on. Mm-hmm. Well, when she had been set to leave for Chicago, she had something, she said, she saw that Gail had a lot of spirits around her and that she needed to be initiated as a shaman. I didn't ask to be initiated as a shaman. I did not, it wasn't in my bucket list, like someday I'd love to be a shaman. Though I don't know if you've ever heard of a gentleman called Ingo Swann, who's considered like the father of remote viewing almost, that he taught the remote viewing to the scientists that were working with him. Yeah. Okay. He's passed on, but he was an amazing, he did remote viewing into the future of things that nobody would know till years later were true. I think it was the rings around Jupiter, or so amazing. So he was an amazing man. And the first day that I met him, when my friend Russell brought us to his house to meet him, when we left and he was shaking my hand goodbye, and he looked at me and he said, your problem is you're a shaman. You just don't know that you're a shaman. You don't know how to act like a shaman. I thought to myself, what a weird thing to say. And I didn't even think to remember he had said it till a zillion years later. And all of a sudden, from that point on, I was involved in shaman conference, shamanism, shamans coming to me. I mean, he was seeing my future, telling me, and I'm thinking, like, what's he talking about?
Your soul was like, we're going to make you do this, whether you like it or not. Like, it's happening.
So what a wise and insightful man, that Ingo Swann.
Yeah.
And so she said, I have to initiate you. And it took 6 days of preparations at my kitchen table, from first thing in the morning till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. We would work all day into the night. And she had her Mongolian shaman book with her, and it says exactly how many centimeters things have to be and what the length of everything is. And we were making all these, I'll show you a picture. We were making all these snakes, and the snakes are used to, they're the messengers, and you have to feed them with milk at the top. And when you make the snakes, they have eyes and a nose and a head and then the long tail. And she would shove sheep's wool that we happened to find, and my friend Kim happened to have a supply in her household. Said, I've been saving this bag of sheep wool. I never knew for what reason. I said, well, here we go, you know. It was clean, beautiful sheep wool.
Wow.
And we made these, we would make the little tubes that would be the snake body. So I don't know if you can see it here in this.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would measure them in the morning after we did them all night long. And sure enough, one was, a quarter of a centimeter or half a centimeter up. It was no good. We had to redo them all.
Wow.
So until they were the perfect, what they had to be. And this is Handa. She was another shaman that came to visit from Mongolia, and we were preparing, she was doing a presentation at the local university here at Sonoma State University. And she came and shared, and I always do the English introduction for them. And then they give me a paper, and so I would read what she would want to say. And then she did her rituals. And very, very lovely woman. And you'll see the same thing with her hat. They all have feathers on the top of the head. And the feathers have to do with, it's like antenna, and information is coming through that into the person. So I didn't even say yes or no or anything that I wanted to be a shaman. Okay, if this is what I had to do. And my kids and family were like, oh yeah, what is mom doing now, And it was an incredible amount of work, and I was exhausted, after this was it all culminated in this huge ceremony. And the ceremony went on for 7 hours, and there was a lot of preparation for the ceremony. My husband, who's just the best guy to run to do with these things. I'm just saying, he rolls with it just beautifully. And mind you, he has a PhD from MIT in artificial intelligence, and he went to Yale at 16. So he's a brilliant scientist guy, and his degrees all have to do with engineering and science, not shamanism. But he welcomes his wife as she is, and he supports my thing. So Zagda had said to him, you need to go out, and we need dried horse manure, because that's what they use to burn. In Mongolia, it would be yak, but here it's, horses or cow.
He's like, you need me to get you what?
Right. And he knew one of our neighbors who had horses. So he went over there, and he took a little scoopful, and he put it in a little bag, and he comes back and he brings it to her. And remember, again, you got to remember, there's no translator. And the look on her face of pissed offness was, we were like, what? He thought he was so proud and happy about this. And she was like, get in the car. I'll take you to the horse. So she had, on one of our walks showing her the area, had spotted somewhere where there was a lot of dried horse manure. Well, it was someone using it under their bushes and plants for fertilizer, and like mulch kind of combination. They had horses. It was their horses. So my husband, thinking, I'm a black man and I'm going and stealing stuff from this property, I better be filming this while we're doing this in case somebody comes along, So she wanted garbage bags full of manure, not a little handful, right? Because we had to put it in circles in abalone shells all around a giant, very old redwood tree on my property, because she was creating a sacred space, and the smoke from the dried horse manure is what's creating this smoke to cleanse and purify. So he came back with the 2 bags, and everybody was in good graces again. And then he had to draw, I think I have a picture of that here. He had to draw children on fabric. And I found Latimira. I'll show you a picture of her. And each child, when he finished drawing it, and it was almost like banner, like you would see, like those Tibetan flags.
Oh yeah.
It's like little squares like that hanging. And she looks at the pictures, and I could only draw a stick figure if she'd asked me. So I was glad it was him because he's very talented. And he draws these very nice children. But she looks at it and she says, what kind of children is this? They have no shoes, they have no hats, they have no scarves. She wanted them completely outfitted. So he completely outfitted them. And then it was put up as high as it could be put into our tree. And so the entire ceremony, that group of children is there. And that's the only thing she took with her back to Mongolia of our ceremony. And she said that every person she has initiated, she takes that and hangs that at her home. So at her home, there are all these different flags like this of the people she's initiated. So my husband's artwork is hanging at her house in Mongolia there, honoring the fact that I got turned into a shaman.
How cool.
And she did other things, which I can't symbolically answer the questions to, but we had to hang paper cups with fat in it all around the tree. And then we had to have candles, and there were other things. We had to have certain bones of certain animals for meat, and there had to be a certain amount of food cooked because she wanted food served during this. And my mother was there, my niece was there, my kids were there. It was a spontaneous thing, and it was on a work day. So she said, oh, have all your family and friends. I didn't know what they were going to be seeing. I don't think I would have invited them had I known, but no, I would have invited them. I'm not that shy. But anyhow, she had me, which I'll show you. She had me chant. So I had to chant over and over again, and I had to drum, and I had to dance, and mostly with my eyes closed, and I had to play the jaw harp. You know what the jaw harp is, right?
No.
So I'm going to play it for you for a second. So this is the jaw harp, and this is what you use to call the spirits. And when you listen to the sound, to me, it reminds me of, yes, that is a sound that would be that kind of a sound. So this is what it's like. So playing the jaw harp is one of the most important tools in the Mongolian shaman thing. And for some reason, and I cannot tell you why, somehow I can play this thing. I can't play any instrument. I have no musical abilities. I can't even tell a tone. My husband plays amazing piano, and he says, you just hear the note and you go up. I said, you understand? I don't hear any note. I don't go up,
I don't even know what that means.
It's still the same to me, right? I just don't. So when I got this, for some reason, I immediately knew how to play this.
Wow.
So she had me play when she was having her big thing with all the people after I'd been initiated. She had me when the 30 Mongolians came. She had me as the person sitting there playing, doing the thing. I was so honored. And it's become my favoriteest tool when I do shamanic blessings or healing. I don't want to say the word healing, but blessings or whatever you want to call it, that happens when people come to my house and ask me to do this.
Yeah.
This tool really brings in the energy and the information and the spirit of maybe a deceased person that we're trying to send love to that has passed on. This tool is very valuable tool. And it dates back when I went there into the museums, and there were some things of Genghis Khan in those times. They had the jaw harp there then. So that's how long it's been played. And Genghis Khan also, not in our history, because the history we read of Genghis Khan and the history in Mongolia is entirely different. And, he's revered, and he was considered a shaman himself. So this is a very important tool, and this was part of this. And while we're doing that ritual and I'm doing all those things, my son tells me later, Ma, and my kids were, like 20 and over, they're not like 10 years old or something. Ma, I know how much you can't stand the heat. And it was 98 degrees that day. And you were wearing all those animal furs and all that heavy clothing. And you were dancing and singing and playing that jaw harp and drumming. He said, you can't do that. He said, you're somebody who can't, once it's 90 degrees, you're not even moving, you know?
I'm that person too. I can imagine.
I cannot handle heat.
Wow.
And he said, I looked at you, he said, and you were definitely in an altered state. I wished I had, like, we didn't take video of this experience. I don't know why. So I'm grateful for the few photos I have from the people who attended, because I was in an altered state the entire time after this. I can't tell you what went on. I'm so glad there were pictures. So I'm going to show you a picture of the altered state.
Yeah.
So this is the altered state.
Wow.
So you can see Zagda behind me, and she's like doing something to get ready to do the next thing. And then Ayuna's in the red colors, and she's adjusting. So they're making sure, since I'm dancing and there's dangerous things there, they're watching that I'm not falling into anything or that anything will happen. But you can see in the facial expression, that's an altered state of being.
It's like complete surrender. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this was part of this, Mongolian ritual thing. And we had an amazing, unusual experience doing this experiment. Doing this experience. And I never knew how she communicated with me. And then a week later, the group that had came up to film what the experience was for her to initiate. It was for Mongolians, an American woman. So everything was interviewed in Mongolian except when my part came. So when my part came, I spoke in English and I told them what the experience was like for me. And then I said to them, but I don't know how she could tell. I said, she would say things in her mind. She would say, Gail. And I would think, oh, she wants that special herb I got. It's a special grass from Siberia that someone gave me when I was there. And I come down and I give her the plastic bag and she'd look at me and go, Gail, Gail, Gail. And that's, that she couldn't believe, A, that I had that item from Siberia, and B, that I could get it for her when that's on her mind, what she wants. And it's not like I would know the name of that. So he says to her, so how did you do this with Gail? And so she says in Mongolian, and I get to hear in English, I would just think what I wanted Gail to do. And she would just jump inside my head. And I would see her standing inside my mind. And then she would know what to do. So that was her experience of how we connected. And that was 2011. So we just celebrated the 10-year anniversary because it happened. Yes, September 22nd was our anniversary. And she and I send photos and she sends me photos. So even though we can't be together, I haven't seen her since 2011, we stay in constant continued communication. And the other woman I had shown you, Zagda, who I had just met here, she was just here a few years ago, I think it was 2018. She's been doing jaw harping with me because, people want a mentor or a teacher or someone to help you with these things when you're just sort of, I'm just sort of experimenting with it. So, but really, if you follow your intuitive guide inside, which is who I'm following, it takes you through what you really need to know. I get this out of nowhere. She sends me one of those, I don't know if it's WhatsApp or one of those ways of communicating. And it's her playing the jaw harp. And I'm listening to it and going, oh my God, I want to be able to play that good. So, and I learned a new sound, which I had, as you keep playing, all of a sudden the new sound comes. So this was the new sound I had learned, this sort of extended Looney Tune sound. 3 months ago, I didn't know that sound. And it's a new one. So I said to her, I could play for you and then you could tell me. And she says, I played for her and she said, oh no, it's good playing. You just have to keep playing. And each time spirits will teach you new sounds. So now I feel confident to know that as long as I keep playing, I'm going to get better and more spirit sound is going to come. And I can play for her every, once a week if I want, and she can listen to it and she can play and I can hear how amazing it sounds. And I don't know who does this. I mean, it's a wonderful little exchange we're having on learning how to play jaw harp from Mongolia to here, because she's not able to come here now, but we don't lose connection.
Yeah.
Also, a point I want to bring about is there's a lot of shamans and people running out there around there where everything has to do with so for $2,300, you come up to my place, and when you finish, you're going to be a da shaman or a shaman of the blah, 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 blah. Never did she say to me, we're going to do this, but you've got to pay this much money. The only thing she asked me to do was provide everything she needed for the initiation, the food, the water, the vodka, the whatever tools, and whatever that she needed, we provided. She wanted this amount of this, we went and bought whatever she wanted. But that was our only expense in the shamanic initiation. There was nothing, she did not ask for. In fact, she told people they all had to bring me gifts, which I thought was kind of weird, but okay, but that's part of this initiation. And so people brought different, like someone brought a feather thing, or someone brought a bag that I could use, or someone brought a necklace, or, but they were very touching, sweet gifts. And I felt like when I finished this ceremony that I'd finally actually been honored for who I really was as a being, in a way that I never went to high school. I dropped out at the beginning of 10th grade. I never went back to high school. I'd attended a few classes during when I was 18 and I was running my own business that you saw there. I took classes in accounting and bookkeeping and stuff at the local university, but I wasn't going to go to college and get a degree in something. That wasn't me. And so I always felt like everybody else had their little path, like all my girlfriends have their college degrees and their careers, and one's a therapist and one's a physical therapist and another was a big in social work, and they all have these things. And now we're all 66 years old and we're still together, since we're all five, and there's five of us, so we've been together for 61 years now.
Wow.
So you can really say you've watched yourself grow through all of these things together as a group. And I never fit into that mold. And so when I was received this Mongolian initiation into shamanism, I felt like I was getting my certificate. Like I finally got acknowledged or validated or something that was, it gave me the thing. I think Ingo Swann said, you need to become this, but you don't have your something.
Yeah.
I felt like it gave me the something. And when I go and do my little shamanic healings on a friend or a relative or whatever, I always tell them, I don't know what's going to happen and I don't know what I'll be able to do. But each time I do them, I walk away saying, wow, I really am a medium. And I feel, I'm tired after I do them, but I feel very good because I've connected into a part of me that, like it's so hard to have a balance in your life of all the things you do. And I'm somebody who does a lot. I take care of a lot of property and a lot of projects and a lot of things. My one girlfriend called me a civil engineer the other day because we were putting in a septic tank. So, I mean, I'm very well rounded in the knowledge of being able to do a lot of things. But you need to have time for the spiritual part also. So I'm very grateful that they gave me these, and I feel so protected. When I put on my Mongolian shaman clothing, I feel like I've got the coverage on me right now. I've got my Allstate, I'm really protected here. And we can now go and look into these other things. I wanted to show you two other items I use in shamanism. But before that, I just wanted to flash a picture of Vladimira, the shaman we spoke about earlier, the Siberian shaman. So you can see the difference in our height. She's a very tall woman. But this is Vladimira.
She is so
and
tall.
yes, she's very tall and she's just a beautiful woman. In fact, I got to go deviate for 1 second on a story with her, and then I'll go back to my shaman objects. she was staying with us, and she was one of these who got up to do her yoga in the morning and her running at the crack of dawn and was just in amazing shape. And she's running our 3-mile loop, and she's, back here. Before she went the night before, I always have gifts for shamans when they come that I feel like I get a feeling like I want to give you this. And I bought her these beautiful silver earrings that were just strands of silver that hung down like 3 strands. And there was just something about it that called me saying, you have to get this for her. I give her the earrings and she loves them so she puts them on immediately. And the next day she's running with the earrings on and she loses the earring on the 3-mile run.
Oh, no.
And mind you, it's just delicate little strands. So I look at her and it comes from that place I call the knowingness place. And you know what I'm talking about because you and I know. And in that knowingness, I just said to her out of nowhere, from knowing, I'm going to find that earring for you. And I don't say anything else again. I never go looking for the earring. She's left to go back to Russia or wherever she's going. And I'm taking, it's been, which I wish would happen again. This is how many years ago this was. It was when we were having torrential rain, and we're in a drought now in California. And I'm praying for torrential rains again, please, to fill everything up here. Mm-hmm. And it'd been torrential rain, the kind where the sheets of water are going across the road and it floods right down the street from me now because of, construction that was done that deviated the water. So now it floods there all the time. And it was the first break in the weather. And I decided to take a little walk, the 3-mile walk. We take the 3-mile walk, me and my husband. And this is black asphalt. And out of nowhere, and mind you, this is 10 days since she's lost this earring. I haven't even thought about it. And I just walk across the other side of the road, and I don't have good eyesight. And I just bend down and pick up the earring, and there it is in a crevice with the little gold strands. And just what broke was like the part that attaches the ear to the thing hanging, but it was right there next to it. I picked it up just like I had told her that I was going to find that for her, never thought about it again, and then walked blindly across the road and just bent down and picked it up. My husband looked at me and said, how did you do that? I said, I don't know. I just, and then because we can't speak the same language really, I sent her a photo of the earring. And she responded just like Zagda did when I brought the Siberian herbs. And she was like, she just wrote, Gail, Gail, Gail. That's their only response. They say my name a few times. And Gail, Gail, Gail. Anyhow, I'm going to go on to these few instruments that I like to use that I'm just going to share. I'm not bringing down a whole bunch of objects, but there's 2 objects I wanted to share. One is, this is a Huichol bag, a little miniature Huichol bag made by the Huichol Indians. This is all embroidered. Cool. So, and inside it, I keep something that was given to me. By the way, all these things I'm showing you were given to me. The clothing that I wear, my Mongolian clothing, was given to me the night before I left Mongolia. Some artists I had met whose daughter that we knew, a very lovely couple, very well-known artist of Mongolia. Her and her mother handmade that outfit for me. It's called the Adele. That's, I think, D-E-L-L or D-E-L is the name of the Mongolian dress. And I didn't know that that was going to turn into, 5 years later, into my Mongolian clothing. Yeah. And it's all silk brocade and it's very beautiful and it's all lined inside. In fact, when we were there with my kids got to lay and take a nap in her beds in her house. They were sleeping in her house while we were visiting. She told me that was actually the last thing her and her mother did together. Her and her mother had made me that dress, and then her mother had passed away some months after that. And that was their last project together they'd ever done. Oh. And for me in my life, for some reason, I come into people's lives during death or when death is about to happen. I always have dreams of death. My body starts going into the experience of what they're dying from, even though I don't even know that they're dying. my grandmother always spoke to the dead. So me and the dead are always, you know, so I'm very comfortable with this. And I was so moved that she would give me such, and I didn't know that then when it was sent over. And of course, she didn't know her mother was going to pass away. On the front of my Mongolian clothing, I wear, it's 100-year-old otter skin that a very dear friend of mine's husband's father had caught. That's how old it is, because the woman who gave it to me was in her 80s and has passed away. And it was her partner's father who had caught the otter. So that's how old this otter was. And on the back, on my second trip to Mongolia, the night before leaving, the courier always comes to your house the night, you've packed your suitcase and all of a sudden this item arrives. And this was from Dr. Lagwa, the one who just got my mulberry jam. He wanted me to have his foxtail that had been caught by his friend and had been hanging in his house for 15 years. And he said, I see a lot of people, he said, but you really do have the touch into the stars, or I forget how he worded it, was very poetic. And I feel that you really should have this fox for you to take home. So all these shaman items came together before the teacher, and then the teacher arrived, and then the shaman thing happened. So in those years, I received this gift, and I never knew what exactly it was for or what to do with it. But I'll show it to you here, if you can see it. Yeah. It's a piece of balsa wood.
Oh, it's beautiful.
And it's a pendulum, which I'm sure you know lots about, and I didn't. And in case your listeners don't know, a pendulum is a little device that's been used in, I don't know, for centuries or how long, for divination. And mostly I've always seen that being used with like a pointed crystal, like kind of shaped sort of like a diamond or pointing down, or I've seen mostly crystal type things used as pendulums. But I'd never seen like a piece of wood, a round piece of, I think this is a piece of balsa wood. I actually have no idea, because as I said, it was given to me by a visiting Ecuadorian shaman at our conference. And I asked other people, he said, no, nobody, he gave that only to you. Nobody else got this. And I didn't, so I guess I'm supposed to do something with this. Well, I learned that it shows me yes, and it shows me no, and it shows me maybe. And it seems to be incredibly accurate at this. And on another interview I was on with a psychic in Bangkok a couple of weeks ago, she told me all these wonderful uses of this I had never thought about. So when she's working on a client, like using Reiki or doing different healing kind of work, she'll take out her pendulum and ask, should I be working on the liver? And it'll say yes or no to her, or she'll hold it by their body. I had never used it that way. But now that I'm learning about how she's used it, I'm going to try experimenting with this in another way. Yeah. I've always just used it when someone comes to my house that wants a shamanic blessing or cleansing. After they're finished, I always say to them, if you have a question, don't tell me the question, because I don't need to know what the question is. It's just for your own personal. And I will just tell you, I'll find the place on your body where the energy feels it. And there is a place as you go down the body and it picks it up. And then it swirls to the right for yes, it goes to the left for no. Counterclockwise is no, and clockwise is yes. And then going like this is maybe. So I always ask it before I start to show me what the yes is or the no is, because I want to be sure it's using the same direction each time. And then I do it on the person and I hold it to their space, and then I tell them, and let's see if we can. So like, I'll just give a quick demo here on this. So I'm going to just say, show me yes.
Pretty strong.
So now if I were to raise it down lower in my body, it would go even stronger, but I don't think I can get my camera and the thing in it.
Wow.
So you'll see that that's yes. And of course it's counterclockwise in the filming, but
yeah,
it's clockwise when I'm showing it again.
Right.
So these are little things. These are things that I use when I'm doing this, with someone. And for me, it's not something that I I don't advertise. I'm not looking to do things on people. It's when someone I know is having a something, or and I say, if you want to come over, or they ask me on their own. That's the only way that I do that. And I only do that where there's no money involved. My cousin Davida was here the other day, and she needed closure in a friend she'd lost during COVID that she didn't get to feel complete about. And we did this lovely ceremony and had this lovely experience with her friend. And she brought me this bag she had made and some cards, and it was a very sweet, and she's my cousin. And like that to me is like the acceptable thing. That's how I've always felt with shamans also, that I want to give them these gifts. But I don't do that for anything in exchange, because it's doing something for the universe, and the exchange comes back to you in ways that are 10 times more than receiving some sort of money or something for that. So that, I'm just saying, that's my way.
Right.
So I always finish the ceremony with this sound, and I wanted to play that sound for you, and then maybe if there's another question you want to ask me, but I was kind of skirting around all this different stuff, but I have them close their eyes and listen to this sound, and it's just such a beautiful sound. And it just feels like at the end, like now we've, like the vibration now is finished with this. And I do that around their body. And I do other things. I didn't bring down my drums and things like this, but I'm finding my way of doing this, and it's not any particular traditional I just listen. When I do this, I ask. Some people say they're asking spirit. I'm just asking. I'm not sure who's answering, but
So
I'm
far,
just
so
asking.
good.
Right, exactly. I'm just asking, and I hear information. And when I hear the information, I share it with the person that's sitting there. But basically, a half hour or 45 minutes that we're doing this, it's really all sounds and candles and smells of different incenses. Mongolian incense, which is from the juniper trees. Sage, which is a Native American incense, very wonderful for cleansing. And I spray a water from Peru called agua de flores, and it's this wonderful smell that I just spray through the air. So I kind of like to take all these different traditions together, and I'm not following one, it's not a Native American thing, or it's not a Mongolian, or it's not a Siberian. It's something from all of these different things. And I only pick the tools that I'm going to use on that person. What tells me to, I have them all lined up, and I say, well, what does this person need? And and I get drawn to whatever that thing is. And then I set an altar up for the person who's coming, and it's different for each person, depending what things tell me that I should use with them. I have a very powerful tool upstairs that was given to me that I keep in a glass case that was given to me by Zord Spatar, my Mongolian shaman friend from before when we first met. And he just came up and he just gave this to me, and he said, I had to have this. I'm told it's used to rid negative energy on a person. And it's a bone that's, you blow through the middle of the bone. And each end of it is either covered in leather or silver. I only saw them in museums when I was in Mongolia. And they would have ornate silvers on each ends, amazing carvings. And I saw them under glass cases. So I don't have a whole lot of information about it, just that I was given such a tool. The things that I use, that one I very rarely take out. That's like, it's got to be, so I only took it out. I've only used it, I think, twice or whatever. I don't know that much about it. I don't want to, you want to be sure whatever you're doing, you're feeling good about the tool that you're working with. So that, I think, so now I think I'm good there. I think, I don't know.
Well, you and I are very similar in many respects and different in others, but how you talk about you didn't ask for any of this, it just happened to you, all the tools you use, they just came to you and showed up, like this is just ready and this just happened like this and you didn't arrange for it or any of that. I'm very similar and also in the way that we, whatever you want to call it, treat people, heal people, offer people services, whatever they might be. I'm very similar too. And people ask me like, oh, do you do this? I'm like, I don't really even know what that is. I do something and it will be really cool for you, I think. So we could just do that and see what happens. I don't know. And I'm very similar and like, I'm drawn to this and this for this person and not those other things. And it's all just very intuitive. And so it's very cool for me to hear because I'm always like, I don't know, am I making this all up in my head? And then hearing you talk about it, I'm like, that's exactly it though. Like, that's exactly it. And I'm sure other people have other ways, but very similar. And so that's very cool that we've connected in this way. And of course, I haven't had really cool experiences with Siberian or Mongolian or all of these other shamans or this initiation, and that's very unique and special. And like people were saying in the chat, that sound you played was like, I even felt it and I saw like the waveform or something maybe of it. I don't know. It was very beautiful. And especially the sense of closure, like you said, it was very nice. I love to hear that. And so maybe that is a good place to start to draw things to a close.
I wished I could see your comments because I see nothing here but your bookcase.
Yeah. Yeah, no, they're all, you'd have to be in the YouTube or Rockfin to see them. But it's cool. People enjoyed that sound and everything that you've said and shared with us tonight. Very, very cool. Cool to see the pictures, cool to hear the stories, and I love that spirit of just following your intuition and your heart and trusting that, and and even if an Ingo Swan tells you, you're like, yeah, well, it'll happen someday, right? That's really cool.
I should, since I'm doing this, I don't even know why I'm doing all these podcasts and interviews. Originally, my idea was to get a social platform so that a book that I wrote, A Small, Medium, at Large, Adventures of a Psychic Traveler, would get published.
Yeah.
And instead, I found myself learning all these different things because first of all, I've never listened to a podcast. Now I'm doing them. And then I'm being on these different things. I never did the, like the YouTube channel and all. So I'm discovering all these different shows. Yeah. And then I'm learning such wonderful things. I was listening to one of the shows, I think it was Bigfoot and the Bunny. And they had someone that was talking about, I think it was that show, that was talking about how everyone in death, often people see the white lady and that she's dressed in white. And when I was in the Philippines visiting Philippine friends, that's the story there. Oh, the white lady, and they're terrified of the lady in the white dress.
Oh, yeah.
It's just something you've in different cultures, everybody's seen this white lady, she's in a white dress. Well, somebody in the comments or whoever she was interviewing, I'm not sure if that's how it was, said, oh, did you know that there was a time when women were buried in their wedding gown? And that was the tradition. I don't know if it was Europe or where it was done. And I thought, oh my God, that must be where the white dress thing came from. I mean, it just seems so, it makes more sense than why aren't they wearing a green dress or a red dress or a blue dress? Why are they always seen in white?
Yeah.
So I just thought, oh, it might have started where some of them really were in their wedding gown and they came in their spirit form and there was the wedding gown. And that's where the lady in white arrived. I don't know. But listening to that show was like, oh, and some other shows I've been hearing things and I'm like, oh yes, that's exactly. So I feel like, and especially with COVID and not traveling now, and I love to travel, having this form of being able to talk with you and meet you, and then us having a second visit together. And now on, let's see, what is it?
24th?
The 24th of October, you're going to be on my podcast. So I'm going to be happy to share you with the people that are following, me. Not that there's, I only have a couple hundred followers, but I love the way the thing grows and becomes bigger. And now I'm interviewing people in Bangkok. This week I have Nick Cook. I'm having him on a podcast. He's in England, so I'm connecting to these people in different countries, and I'm finding that I'm feeling like they're my friends. I mean, it's not like I don't feel like when I hang up, oh, I'm never going to see this person again. That was it. We had our one interview and we're over. It feels more like finding like-minded people. And the woman from Bangkok, Debbie, she's originally from Ireland but lives in Bangkok, and she was voted the number one psychic and medium in all of Thailand.
Wow.
She and I have hit it off like we know each other for years, and she finds it very comforting. She says, I don't have a lot of people I can really talk to here in Thailand about these things, and it's just great to know that we can talk to each other. So my whole idea about all this reaching out with other people is, if anything that we've shared or said gives any kind of healing or a new little path or a new idea, then we're doing, and there's nothing to do with monies, then we're doing very good work then. So tomorrow I have another podcast coming out with Russell Targ, so that's very exciting. I did want to add one other last Mongolian thing, which I'm so glad we did have the extra time, which was that after my Mongolian shamanic initiation, I also ended up receiving other honors from Mongolia that I considered, I can't believe they're doing this with me, but they are. So the University of Science in Mongolia, with Professor Batbayar, presented me with an honorary PhD.
Wow.
And this is for a girl who didn't get a high school diploma. Receiving an honorary PhD from Mongolia is an amazing thing. I have them on the wall here. I can show them to you. But then I was also given a medal on another year that the Mongolians came out from Mongolia and did a ceremony in my back building, and they honored 3 people with different honors. And one of them was the man who wrote The Way of the Shaman. Here I have the book here. And I have to say, if anyone wants to read about shamanism, this would be the first book I would recommend that they read, because he brought shamanism. Michael Harner, he's also passed on now, but he brought shamanism to the Western mind here. His books were the first things that, back in the late 60s, early 70s, whenever he was writing, that were the first books that people were reading about this. And this is an original. Now there's a little pocket version that I have that's very old, but right now it's in, it's a bigger book and a bigger size, not a penguin pocketbook thing or what, Bantam this is.
Yeah.
Anyways, so he was one of the recipients, and another fellow that was Jürgen Kremer, who was the president of the shamanism conference that we were involved in. And the two of them received an award, but I received a medal. And it was the first woman ever in Mongolia to receive this medal. It had never been given to a woman before. And it's a medal that they give out every 4 years to someone from another country. You can't be Mongolian. And it has to do with what their work is with the country and the people of Mongolia. So when they were trying to show me without our translator how important a medal this was, they brought me to a site that showed me Secretary of State James Baker, and he had received this medal. And so they were showing to me how important this medal was to me by showing who the 2 Americans that have only 2, I'm the 3rd American and first woman to receive this medal. The second gentleman was Professor Scalapini. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he was a Berkeley University professor who back in many, many years ago, united Mongolia with the United Nations. And he had done all this. He was an anthropologist. He did, an amazing amount of work. And the Mongolians, I would always have to bring them to his house in Berkeley to see him whenever they came to visit. And they would always bring gifts to honor him for what he had done for the Mongolian people. So I was completely floored that they put me in with that group. Believe me. Here, let me just show you it so that You know, I'm not making this up.
I believe you, but I love to see it.
So now that, you know, this is the PhD from it's the National Academy of Sciences, and it awards the degree of honorary doctor to Gail M. Hayssen according to so this is the thing. And then on the bottom, you have to have those seals for these things to be official.
Yeah.
Either red or gold, but you need the official seals.
I love that the yin yang is part of their symbol, their official symbol. That's really cool.
And then this is the medal, and then the little book comes written saying who the medal is for.
How cool.
And what and what year it was given, and blah blah.
Oh, cool.
So, and it has to do with I had been going around and sharing my slideshows and my experiences of Mongolia at colleges, and I did a presentation for the Rhine Research Center that was held at the Duke University campus. And she said, I'm not sure, you're not the kind of person we usually bring in for these lectures in our lecture series, but it's a lot of scientists and we'll see what happens. And I showed them my whole Mongolian presentation and they loved it.
That's awesome.
So even though they were scientists, we were still able to reach each other in a very good way.
Yeah.
So I think that's what that has to do with, and the fact that I welcome any Mongolians here and they can all always stay at my home, and that I've brought my family and everyone there, and that I've been promoting, things about Mongolia since, 2006.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really valuable cross-cultural connection that you're making in so many different ways. And again, not because you asked for it or sought it out or anything, and this is just what's happened, and it's beautiful. And so I love that they've honored you for those things. And you're absolutely right about this, reaching out and connecting. And, that was the whole intention of Rogue Ways, is to create community and connection and to learn from each other, and especially to empower people. And I feel like your story is really empowering too, because it reminds people, again, to trust and follow their own path, that it's going to be unique and it's going to be theirs, and they can take elements from anywhere they need to in order to accomplish whatever they want, whether they're a spiritual path or something completely different. That principle, I think is true for everybody. And your show, I know every single person listening should go follow it, subscribe to it on whatever apps that you have that you're listening to podcasts or whatever watching. I don't know if you do video or not, so I would love for you to tell us about that and where people can find it, because you know some of the coolest people who exist on the planet, and I'm sure your show is just going to get better and better and better, and I'm very excited about it. I'm honored that I get to be a guest on it. So tell everybody all about it.
Well, I'm doing it every other week right now because I really didn't know. I thought to myself, nobody's going to want to hear me once a week. So I just figured every other week is good.
That's pretty good.
And they're pre-recorded shows, so they're all ready to go. And I am doing all of this because I signed up with Michelle Freed and LITM Media. So they're the ones that have been booking me on shows. That's how I found you. Mm. And they're also the ones that are producing the podcast. So after we do them, they put in the music, do the things. I would not know how to do that.
Yeah, that's very nice.
So it's really a nice thing. Maybe one day in a year, I'll be able to do this all myself. Who knows? But I have them putting them on, but it is on like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And there's like 9 different places that you can look this up. But I like the YouTube one because for me, I like to see the person.
Yeah.
I call it computer radio now, but I guess everybody else, it's really convenient. If you're in your car, you just listen to them. But I like actually seeing the person. So the YouTube channel is A Small Medium at Large with Gail Hayssen, Hayssen. And it's important they say that because there's a couple other small, medium at large people.
Oh, okay.
But they don't really have current podcasts or anything going on. Their sites from a few years ago. And I would love if we have another one coming out tomorrow. It's going to be with Russell Targ.
Russell Targ's so awesome. Yeah.
The ones we've had already was, we had Sally Rhinefeather, who's the daughter of J.B. Rhine. She was my opening show at 91 years old, by the way. We just had Stanley Krippner, who just turned 89 years old. We had Stephen Schwartz, who's 81. I was going, when I was making my list, I was saying, I want to do everybody that's 80 and over first. Russell will be, I think, is 86. So I wanted, so that's my first grouping, is really these people in that area. After Russell, now you're going to start seeing all kinds of other people and new people like you, and people that I've met that I've not met in the flesh before, that I've only met through this form. These other people that are my first guests, I've known them for 20 years.
Yeah.
So it feels like I'm interviewing my friends. But now I'm kind of branching out and I'm interviewing people. I have a podcast I'm going to record on Thursday with a gentleman named Nick Cook, and he writes all these amazing books. And he's in England, and he met me because Dean Radin asked Dean Radin, I need to talk to someone about shamanism because of a book I'm writing. And he said, call Gail Hayssen. So he called me, and he interviewed me, and we became friends. Mm-hmm. And so now when I'm doing the podcast, I said, would you mind? And he said, I'd love to be in your podcast. So I'm trying to, and now this psychic I had from Thailand that we just did, and I've got this man, Randy, who he remote views from his home in Oklahoma, places in the world. Like he helped out people in villages in Kenya where he remote viewed places where they should dig for water.
Wow. Yeah.
And
cool.
He said, we struck 5 wells, not wells, but whatever the water is there, 5 water places. In 5 places, everyone said there can't be any water, but I knew there was water there. He said at the end, the chief offered us his 2 daughters and a goat.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And he said, my wife really doesn't want me to bring home another wife,
Maybe the goats, but.
Yeah, and he said, and some of the other people in Kenya said, take the goat. That's the most valuable thing there,
Oh, so cool.
I didn't know, we met in a remote viewing study group.
Yeah.
And I asked if he would be on my podcast, and I don't know him, just like I don't know you, in the way of saying knowing this.
Right.
And so all these wonderful things are coming from this. So I'm just hoping to keep, having more shows and more people enjoying it. So far, we're doing, getting very nice comments. You'll have to tell me how I find your show, because that's my other part afterwards. I'm such a computer illiterate. I couldn't even find my own shows.
Well, I know that you have a website, and I have linked to it below. So if people can't find A Small Medium at Large with Gail Hayssen, Hayssen, by looking on their podcast apps or YouTube or wherever else, they can go to that site, and I'm sure it links to everywhere that they might need to go.
Well, because my daughter, very, 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 very grateful about, is a brilliant webmaster. She set up my website. It's a small medium at large .co, not com, but co. And on it, she posts every show. So all the shows that have already been aired are there. And then shows that I've been on, if I can figure out that I get the link, I'm putting it on the website also. So they could see other shows from other people, and they can see the podcasts that we have.
Yes, perfect. Well,
so I'll be sending you a prep sheet for our next visit together.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Well, and it's always so fun to talk to you, and the time flies by. And like you've said, and I've said before, I feel like we've been friends and have known each other, and it just flows so easily. But what are your last ideas or pieces of wisdom, or just thoughts or feelings that you want to share with all the people listening out there before we start to say goodbye?
Well, I'm doing something I never thought that I would do or why I should be doing it, and I'm having a ball doing it. So I would say to people, sometimes when you can't imagine yourself doing something, give it a try. It may really be the right thing for you.
Very good advice. Very perfect. Novelty is one of the pieces of happiness. So you're leading people the right direction. And fellow travelers of the path, it is a beautiful thing. This has been your analog, concentric, electric dose of wisdom according to the world shaman, Gail Hayssen. Gail, thank you so much for coming back to Rogue Ways tonight to talk with us. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Absolutely. And terrifying are the spaces when we imagine confronting the darkest and deepest aspects of self, But this is only when we are imagining such. When we actually go, we find there's difficulty that softens, a flow that arises, and a grace that swoops just behind, before, and beyond us to light the way, carry the burden, and lift our spirits. We were always right there, confronting the truth, and while it hurt a bit, it was only the pain of letting go of the version of us we thought we were when we arrived at this very special mirror. The pain of what we thought was true but wasn't falling away is fleeting when we let it go. Do not fear the moment of confrontation awaiting you in the darkest shadows of self. Embrace the opportunity to find out who and what you truly are shining there in the darkness. This is the seed of the true you that you have been becoming all along. Let everything else fall away, and until you can light the way for others with the seed of light you found within yourself, travel well, aim for balance, and always look inside first. Mwah.
Beautiful.
I heard the Freemasons called you. Man, they at it again, and I'm out to tell the truth once more. That's right. It's on the cracking, unknown in the house. APOGZ, that's right. Hitting the stereo near you. Truth is the best thing, and it's on. Yo, I once thought that I wanted to get them on track, but there's something more bigger than that. Something lurking, waiting to blow this state right off the map. A hidden agenda related to September. Doves carved up on the wall next to the highway. Up in the concrete, while rolling home next to where I stay. With state's destruction, like Key Martin malfunction. While NORAD's in the mountain anticipating our next move. My heart's jumping and I'm like, fuck waiting. While crooked taxes are burning a hole in my pocket. With a dollar bill in the pyramid that's watching. Instead of having a capstone on top of it, they have an eye with a fast surprise while you're flossing it. Greedy niggas jocking it, politics plotting it. So who you vote for really doesn't mean shit. So save your energy from being drained by the enemy. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, envisioning dreams of them chasing me. Skull and bones of Freemasonry, secret agencies with a plan to dominate all of man. Check the records of DIA, strange murals and paintings similar to the ones next to the highway. With pyramids and flames underneath them looking like they're about to fly away. I can't be tripping, but it sounds like I'm on acid. Most people slipping, taken below DIA held captive in the near future, where they won't hesitate to reinstate new laws for a bigger cause. I'm talking about established civilian concentration camps, introducing the military's labor programs. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people. Expand your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you witness the belittlement of your people.
Feds ain't stretching the truth, the script that he's spitting is true. Pay attention to what's going on or it might happen to you. When it's happening to cellular communication monitor, behavior studied and controlled through chemicals bombing nerves. Thomas murder Jesus ain't got anything to do with it. Religious cynic, where experiments cage and lace in terms of accepting limits. Things they can't explain in the sky when I'm in the Rockies. Chakra systems limited due to the voltage overhead pop. Mind control victims, slap clips and machine guns for recess. FCC will help us speak less, manipulate us through weak. Feel right non-fiction with the CIA trying to kill me filthy. Talking about the underground facility at DIA, no one feels that place laced with hints. Notice whenever I return home, black sun references in a new world Masonic capstone. Croy and Area 51 workers the building, I don't mean to rant. In the face of an emergency, it doubles as a FEMA camp. The reaction solution trickery repeated through history. NORAD's listening in using technology, tracking where you piss. I might be paranoid or just facing the fact. Better watch what you say, it's another day under the Patriot Act.
Extend your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you intercept a little bit of your people. Extend your mind just a little bit, forget the little shit before you intercept a little bit of your people.
The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else. Success for people like this is measured in terms of money, which they then translate into power. Corruption and violations of the Constitution. Secret societies, the push for one world government. I'd like to get corruption and violations of the Constitution. The idea is to bring people to the point where they are helpless, passive, and unable to assert their own creative power to form anything else.